The Final Summit is produced by Bloodstream Media and made possible thanks to our sponsor, Tremo Pharmaceuticals. Visit resethastudy.com to learn more about their work. The Final Summit was also made possible by support from Genentech. Visit genentechhemophilia.com to take a look at how they are supporting the hemophilia community.
Carsenz Pyramid is unlike any of the other Seven Summits climbs. It is located in a very remote location, and the climb is incredibly steep, but not nearly as cold as the other climbs. To reach the mountain, we took a helicopter from a local village to the base of the peak. After a few nights and several acclimation hikes, we summited the mountain. But instead of heading back to civilization via helicopter, our team opted for the less common hike-out route. This would take almost a week and would take us through areas that very few foreigners had experienced. Descending from the alpine landscape into the lush jungle was a powerful transformation. The density of the growth was something I had never experienced before. The native tribespeople that were portering our gear wore no shoes, which astounded me. The rocks earlier on the trail were razor sharp, and the roots and vegetation slippery. But they were sure-footed. They moved with ease and speed I hadn't seen before. Lower still on the trek, raging rivers lined the trail. Fallen logs were utilized for crossing when possible, and when those weren't available, small branches were lashed together with reeds and other locally woven grasses. Despite significant bouncing and sagging, these bridges were strong and stable. At one point, we passed a bush that stretched for almost 100 yards that appeared to be covered in some sort of white fibers, almost like it had been wrapped in cotton candy. But as we got closer, I realized that this was not cotton candy. These were spider webs, and this entire bush was covered in brightly colored spiders. It was the most terrifying bush I have ever seen, straight out of a nightmare. On the final night of the trek, the locals went out hunting and trapping for food, and they returned with 2 animals. The first, I later found out, was a tree kangaroo, and the second, I never got confirmation of, but I believe it was an echidna, which looks like a cross between a hedgehog and an anteater. It was surreal. We were offered a taste of these 2 animals, and I decided, hey, when else would I get to try tree kangaroo? So I gave it a shot. Would I do it again? No. The trek had been insane, and by far the most unique and memorable experience I had had. In the 4+ years of striving towards the 7 summits, I had been to several new continents and climbed 5 amazing peaks. But how the heck did I end up wandering through the jungle in one of the most remote regions of the world? How was I sitting in a small hut, eating tree kangaroo with the native people of Papua? I started thinking about the path that led to this moment, both literal and metaphorical. It seemed like the stars had to align to reach this amazing and beautiful place. But it was really just setting a goal and then finding a way to make it happen. At this point, I should let you know, when I started this journey, I didn't have a plan. I just had a dream. Even my first decision to travel to Africa and climb Kilimanjaro was a bit impulsive. I knew it was something I wanted to try, but I had no idea how it would actually work. I didn't know how I was going to pay for the climb or what I would experience in a developing country. I just said yes. Even though the path wasn't clear, I dove in because I saw my dream and it was the only way to reach it. But those destinations, those peaks, they led me on a journey that let me see incredible parts of the world that I would never have imagined. From Believe Limited and Bloodstream Media, this is the Final Summit podcast, supported through advertising by Tremo Pharmaceuticals and Genentech. My name is Chris Bombardier, and I'm a mountaineer with hemophilia. From 2011 to 2018, I successfully climbed the 7 summits, the tallest mountain on each of the 7 continents. But in between continents, peaks, and infusions, I learned so much more about myself, my disease, and my place in the world. Today, Carsenz Pyramid and the importance of saying yes.
The Final Summit from Bloodstream Media is brought to you in part by Genentech. Genentech's vision to advance all aspects of life with hemophilia begins with their mission of treatment for all. This mission inspired the creation of the Genentech Patient Foundation, a program committed to helping underserved communities around the world gain access to treatment. To learn more about this initiative, please visit www.genentechcommitment.com.
Carsenz pyramid was just so different. The climb was fun. It was like more rock climbing, but you weren't really on the mountain for many days. Did have to do a Tyrolean traverse over like a couple 1,000-foot cliff, which is like you're hanging on a wire, pulling yourself over. So that was pretty wild. But trekking through a jungle with these native porters from these local tribes, seeing like spiders and animals and just feeling like we were in this place that hardly anybody's ever seen. It just felt so lucky to be able to be in that space. And I just felt so appreciative of like these experiences that I've gotten to have that I wouldn't have gotten without deciding to go on this journey. Like I felt like I was in the middle of a National Geographic magazine. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. Like, how did I end up here? Like, this is just amazing. And it was from, just having a crazy idea and just like not giving up on it.
For me, when we first started having our discussions about the climbing,
We're now joined by my wonderful wife, Jess.
it was always a dream. It was something that you would like to attempt to do, but it was never presented as this is a thing that I will do and will complete. I guess I'm kind of curious when, in your mind, the Seven Summits went from this thing that you knew about to this thing that you thought would be fun to try
I think it was on Killy.
when you were doing Killy.
Yeah, it was the first time I'd been on a mountain for multiple days. It wasn't like real mountaineering because you have porters, but I was like, okay, I do like being on a mountain for multiple days. I liked the summit day of getting up middle of the night and walking uphill for a very long time. I was like, this is something I really love. And then I kind of saw, I think, the vision of how I could actually use the Seven Summits to make a difference, which just like made it very solid in my mind of a goal.
When I was thinking about it, or at least in our conversations, I really only focused on one mountain at a time. I mean, I think that as we progressed forward, we never knew if you were going to get to the next mountain or not. So I never bothered myself with worrying about the next one.
I think it's funny because I think in my mind, I was like, I'm going to do them all. So that was like my mindset. I was like, I'm going to figure it out. As far as finances and like how we were going to get to the next one, we were just like, well, let's figure out this one and then we'll move to the next one when we get a chance.
You got to think of why you're doing it.
This is Ryan Waters again.
I mean, are you doing it just to say you did it and to check off the list as fast as possible? Or hopefully there's some piece of that is a desire to enjoy the mountains, to test yourself. Put it simply, the things you just mentioned are the three things that primarily is what it comes down to, right? Time, money, the desire. But I think one of the more interesting things to ponder on that topic is like, I've been guiding for 20 years. And one thing you see more of these days is people want to do it fast. And it's all about how could I do this really quickly? Because it's like the instant gratification is a little more in our society these days. Like, of course, the money and the time and being away from family. And a lot of times people don't have careers that allow them to take all this time off to go do mountains. Hopefully there's some desire to enjoy the mountains, to, test yourself, a love of climbing mountains, a love of doing it with other people and experiencing all the stuff you get from that side of it, the teamwork and the camaraderie and all the challenges that you overcome together. So there's a different build up for people, you look forward to it. You want to experience the local culture in a new place.
I think that Chris really wanted to take on the Seven Summits because there's a lot of reasons, but he does love to win.
This is Pat Torrey again from Gut Monkey.
I think that he has this amazing drive to it. And it's not just about winning. It's about reaching goals and getting something done and keeping things moving and being active in that. With him starting this and feeling what it was like to do one, once he saw that there were these other pieces and that he could keep doing them, there is just a drive. He would often fly in to the Gut Monkey office, and within even a couple of weeks of knowing, like, I'm starting my training for Everest, I'd give him a call and say, hey, where are you at? We're going to go do a thing. And he's like, great, I'll be there in 2 hours. I'm like, okay, super. I come pick you up and we can do it now. He's like, no, I'll be there in 2 hours. And then he'd get there, except he would run from across the city wearing a weighted backpack because he was training, and he's still working, but he's also training in the midst of that. And that was his time off that he was doing that. I mean, there's just a drive that I just don't see in a lot of folks to like make that thing happen and to keep it going. I also think that the more he did it, the more he recognized the impact that it had.
I think in a lot of books that I've read about goal setting, motivation.
Once again, this is Lori Kelly of Save One Life.
They call that the law of intention, where you have a goal, you have a vision. I would say a vision even more than a goal. A goal tends to be very specific, but if you have a vision, and you definitely had a vision, and then taking that vision and breaking it down into goals, if it's compelling enough, and my gosh, I can't think of anything more compelling than what you did. Somehow, I don't know how it works, but the universe conspires in your favor, especially if your goal and your vision is to help the greater good.
I think it was really important that you weren't doing this for just you either. Of course, there is a selfish component to it that you enjoy doing these, and there was a sense of you wanted to see if you could. But the underlying driver of it was always about Save One Life and helping other people or bringing a spotlight to other people with hemophilia. And that was always very apparent to me.
I don't think my vision of how setting ambitious goals has really changed much since I've done it. Maybe it's just even solidified, like, you absolutely should have crazy goals and go for them. When I first started thinking of this, I was like, this is a goal, and we'll see how far we get, but like, there's a good chance I'm not going to actually get through all of these, but I'm going to try. But it's funny when you like just start moving forward, how far you actually get. And it was from, just having a crazy idea and just like not giving up on it. That relationship with ambitious goals is the same now. It's like, it makes me even want to think bigger in a way. But since, I guess, finishing the climbs, now with like my work with Save One Life, I've realized that not everything has such a definitive endpoint as the 7 summits, and that some goals or dreams have more obscure and like cloudy path forward and endpoint. So like my goal and dream of helping people with hemophilia in developing countries, like, what is the endpoint for that? That's been more challenging for me, I think, is not having that clear vision of the next step. Whereas like the 7 summits was literally, it's the next mountain. And even if you want to break it down smaller than that, literally on each mountain, it was taking one more step. Whereas working in an office and working in a nonprofit, like, it's different. And that's been much more challenging. So trying to figure out how to kind of apply what I learned on the 7 summits to those more ambiguous goals and dreams, that's been challenging.
You had asked about the origins of Save One Life. I love to travel. I like the adventures. You and I are both, we like adventure seekers. We don't mind going off into the jungle or the slums or the hamlets, the heat, the dust, the cold. None of that is a problem.
Yeah.
Love the challenge, and I love problem solving. So I also like doing what no one else has done.
Yeah.
So I look for opportunities to do what no one else has done, and no one had done this before. In fact, the World Federation had said, well, we don't go into homes. We don't give factor to one family. We give it to the clinic, and then they manage it, which is a good model. But there's still a lot of people that are not being reached. So my goal was to find the people who are not being reached, to connect them, and then also to go into countries where the World Federation had not gone. Because then you can start something from scratch, build it up a bit, and then invite the World Federation to come in. It's an excellent model because it doesn't waste the World Federation's resources.
Yeah.
It puts me to good use. If I fail, nothing lost, nothing gained. It's on my own dime, so it doesn't hurt anybody. We have gone to a couple of countries where it hasn't worked, and that's okay because I always learned something. But more often than not, it does work.
I remember as I was along my journey for the 7 summits, there was a few times where I had no clue how I was going to pay for some of the climbs. And I'd talk to you about it, and you would just keep saying, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And it was like, what I loved about that was it was hopeful. It was like, yeah, we'll figure it out somehow. It'll happen. It was also knowing that it was okay not to have all the details figured out, and you could still move forward. You didn't have to have every single detail figured out before you made progress towards your goal. You just keep making progress, and then those details kind of become clearer.
Exactly. And, it's, to be honest, it's a learning experience.
Yeah.
I read, as you know, the book Mountains Beyond Mountains
yeah.
by Tracy Kidder. And it was a story, it's the story by Pulitzer Prize-winning author about Dr. Paul Farmer, who is an infectious disease specialist, kind of the rock star of infectious diseases globally. And unfortunately, and very tragically, he just passed away in February at the age of 62.
Yeah.
Totally unexpectedly. He's been active in 11 countries and then globally too, but he's well known for revolutionizing healthcare in Haiti. And Haiti, as you know, is one of the poorest countries in the world, and it is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And it happens to be 90 miles off our shore. And so here we are with the richest country in the world, with this country 90 miles off our shore, with kids dying all the time of hemophilia, and nobody's paying any attention to it at all.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of problem I like to handle and solve. I like to get in there. Not that I solve the problem, but I get in and try to make some sense out of it. So Paul Farmer was a huge, huge influence on me. And Tracy Kidder quoted him as saying, if I could just save one life, that'd be something, wouldn't it? Well, he saved like thousands, if not millions of lives.
Yeah.
Taking a holistic approach, which he did as well. He addressed needs not just of the, come to the clinic, you get your medicine. He would walk hours and miles to go visit one patient to make a difference.
Yeah.
And he quoted a Haitian axiom that said, giving people medicine and not giving them food is like washing your hands and drying them in the dirt. So I like that because it says, yes, you can give medicine, which is needed, but it's not going to solve the problem ultimately. We have to look at the person as a whole.
Yep.
And for me, going into the homes, sitting with them, hearing their stories helps you to understand their needs better so you can meet them better. If you just throw stuff at them, like charity, charity comes with very mixed emotions for a lot of people.
I love that quote so much. I think encompasses what we try and do with Save One Life. And it just is reaffirming of Dr. Paul Farmer, this is his mentality. If we can do an ounce of what he did, we're doing something awesome as well. Thank you so much, Lori, for being interviewed for this and being just such a great mentor for me and teaching me so much about our work and just being a part of this and for starting Save One Life.
Thanks. We have a long way to go, but it's like mountain climbing, huh?
Absolutely.
We'll get to this eventually.
Yep, one step at a time.
Chronic pain can be caused by many things, but if you have severe hemophilia, there's a chance that some of your pain might be the result of what's called hemophilic arthropathy, or HA for short. That's why I'm excited to tell you about the Reset HA study from Tremo Pharmaceuticals. Tremo is founded with the goal of developing and delivering non-opioid pain therapies for people living with pain. Tremo's Reset HA study is a clinical research study for people who experience joint pain due to hemophilia. The study is evaluating an oral non-opioid investigational drug designed to be taken once a day to see if it may potentially help relieve joint pain and improve physical function in people with hemophilic arthropathy, HA. You may be eligible to participate in this clinical research study if you are between the ages of 12 to 75, have been diagnosed with hemophilia A or B, have chronic pain in one or more joints, and do not take opioid medication more than 4 days a week. If you are interested in learning more about taking part in Tremo's Reset HA study, visit resethastudy.com. That's RESETHA study.com to find a location near you. Reset the way you manage your pain. Visit resethastudy.com today.
Eating the tree kangaroo in the small village in Papua wasn't even the end of the adventure. We were still miles and miles from an airport that would bring us back to a bigger city. The only way to get there was via the back of a motorcycle. It was such a hairy ride. The initial roads were rough, and we even rode through a few streams. We arrived on the small runway and watched pigs being cleared off. Yes, pigs. Our plane came in for a landing, and its cargo of fuel barrels was unloaded onto the runway. I heard the airport staff member say, "There are no seats. Is that okay?" I thought I misheard him, but then I saw there were no seats. Just our bags stacked on the floor and some straps we could hold on to. There are no seats. Is that okay? Guess it had to be. We couldn't say no at that point. We just had to go with the flow. It was a true adventure. We didn't know the outcome of that flight beforehand, but the risk seemed acceptable and in some ways inevitable. That's the joy of adventure, not knowing the outcome beforehand. And I'm so thankful of all the adventures I've been able to experience in my lifetime. Sometimes you just have to say yes to the mess. Thanks for listening to The Final Summit, a podcast from Believe Limited and Bloodstream Media, supported through advertising by Tremo Pharmaceuticals and Genentech. Be sure to rate and subscribe to The Final Summit on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, and share this episode with a friend. Next week, on our season finale, we're heading back to Everest and braving the frigid cold of Antarctica.
They're either going to go one way or the other. It's just going to get glanced over on the little application paper, or this is going to be a giant red flag, and then it could create some issues. So,
And it was the second.
Obviously, that year, it was a red flag.
I'm Chris Bombardier. Until next time, find your outside.
To learn more about Chris's work with Save One Life, visit saveonelife.org. The Final Summit was written by Chris Bombardier and Drew Johnson. Produced and directed by Keith Cornella. Edited by Greg Bernhardt. Artwork by Christina Newhart. Executive produced by Patrick James Lynch. The Final Summit was made possible by advertising support from Tremo Pharmaceuticals. Visit resethastudy.com to learn more about their work. The Final Summit was also made possible by advertising support from Genentech. Visit Genentech Hemophilia to take a look at how Genentech is supporting the hemophilia community.